I'm not sure how I'm going to do this video. I know I haven't done videos in a while, but this one will probably be all over the place. I know my voice doesn't sound very well. I've been sick, still am. But if I have a cough or anything, I'll try my best to hit this mute button. So, I want to talk about why I made these videos. The agreement was, oh, you can read my shirt by the way. Why are you, let's see, yelling at me? See that? It's right there. Why are you yelling at me? Crying cat. I made these videos because I knew that people weren't going to catch on to what would be going on in the future. Or people will not believe what's happening, or people will not be able to see the deeper meanings of what is going on. And these videos were targeted specifically for Americans, because that's who they're going to target in the future. Because people have to leave the United States. Let me be clear. People have to leave America, not the United States. I'll talk about that in a moment. The difference between those. When I say America, I'm referring to the continental U.S., what you would call the continental U.S., the territories, the states, not Canada, but the states of the United States of America. And these videos are to give people a chance to use my track record and my reputation of what I know, well, of things that I say in the future that happens and come to pass, and use that as credibility for people to take those things seriously. And I know right now I don't have a lot of viewers. That was never the plan to get subscribers, to do advertising or anything like that, because I knew that the YouTube algorithm in 2027 would flip in my favor, and I would suddenly get all these subscribers and all these comments and everything, and I'll become essentially overnight sensation. Happening in, what would it be, 3 years? 2 years? And that's why I created this video, was to give those people a chance where it's a snowball effect. Now, the United States government will have the almost snowball effect. Well, not really. Ukraine will have a snowball effect. The United States will keep pushing it out. But these videos will be more targeted for the average person who didn't know what was going on. And I'm telling you in advance. And you're like, oh, well, this is happening in 2030. And this guy's been talking about it in 2025, and here we are. So he knew what was going on. He knew what was going on. Everything. So I do take it very seriously that I get my stuff right, because there is no being wrong. I don't have the luxury to be wrong on anything. And in the 21st century, the greatest crime is not fake news or anything like that. It's not that. It's the fact that no one knows what's real anymore. People don't know what truth is. People say, well, truth is what is inside people. Everyone has their own truths. There's no universal truths. There's no universal reality. It's all a perception of people. That is the greatest crisis we have, especially in the United States. Trying to find my mic button right there. So that's the greatest crisis we have. And it's interesting because it wasn't until like 2016 this has really gone on. Not like that I was paying attention before, but I remember high school wasn't like that. I mean, we had like the 2008 crisis in high school. That was a big thing in high school. We had the cartels in Mexico. That was another thing that happened. But really, after that, it was kind of like the same until Trump became president in 2016. That was when you had like the sovereign citizen movements rising. That's when you had the riots. That's when you had people out in the streets saying, well, I have my own truths and all this. It wasn't Trump doing it. It was the collective in here, and it just passed throughout the world. It was like we stepped into a different dimension. I mean, at the time, it seemed like it was just stuff that was going on. But then as I got older, I realized, you know what, maybe this is a sign that we're failing. And with the new Trump stuff, you know, with the tariffs and everything, when we, in World War II, I know I'm bouncing around here, but historically, if you look at World War II, we were seen as a superpower for the world. You know, nothing stopped us. You know, we thought we were the good guys. We had some good stuff going on. At least that's what we hoped that we would be seen. It wasn't until yesterday that wasn't entirely true, and we had one opportunity to do that, and we failed. We didn't finish the job. I don't know if I'll talk about that in a future video, but you can look at Poland and see what happened with Poland in World War II. We were the good guys for Poland in World War II. I would say we did that, but shortly after, we kind of lost it, and we didn't do anything. And the world saw this, the Eastern world saw this, and yeah, we weren't really the good guys. We didn't really stand up for the little guy at that time. And we had that one chance to do it. And maybe we never stood a chance at all. And maybe that's why we never got involved. Maybe we just didn't care. But, you know, it will cost us everything. What else? So yeah, the Eastern World sees this. And then we got into the whole industry. We got into the whole global thing. We were raising our economies. We were having China build our stuff. We were building relations with Saudi Arabia, especially in the 80s. Well, I don't know much about Saudi Arabia and Iran. I know that there was conflicts going on, but I was referring to like the oil and gas industry. That's what I was referring to. Is that my phone? I thought I heard a notification go off. So yeah, we were doing Saudi Arabia. We were doing deals with Iran and all that. And so we were building ourselves up for success. And we got all that success, especially over there in the 80s with technology and college. College was big after World War II. Our education got higher. We had a sense of respect. But then Trump now is president, and we're now backpedaling all that. There's people saying we don't want globalists. We don't want it, but that's what we were in World War II. What after World War II? Why are we going backwards? Why are we not defending ourselves in that way? Why are we isolating ourselves? You have to ask yourself, why? Is it for our own good, or is it for Well, it is for own good, no matter which way you flip it. But it's not what people are thinking is good for us. Um, when people, when you read mainstream news, like Fox News, why do people vote for Trump? Well, they voted for him to make America great again, to build up industry in America, to build up stop relying so much on Russia, China, and all this other stuff. But they have the Belt and Road policies. They have BRICS doesn't count. I don't consider BRICS a foundational for anything economic. People can debate on that, but it really has no bearing on anything. It's really the Belt and Road Initiative from China and finding ways to bypass and get around the isolationism in case America took that route, which they are taking that route. So we're not defending who we're seeing it. So we're kind of like in an identity crisis. That would be a good way to explain that. We're in an identity crisis, and it's not just the country. It's not the foreign global symbol that America is. That is just doing it. It's also our own collective population. We see all these things happening on our streets. We see, like I said, riots. People don't know who they are, what they stand for. We've lost it. And no amount of politics will get that back. We're essentially pushing ourselves back to wherever before even World War II. We've had times when we had immigrants come over here. They're not coming here. They're going to be leaving here. So what's the future of America? Nothing. And that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. I make these videos, and I speak in metaphors, symbolism, and all this. I speak to that today. But in the future, when these things take place, these aren't metaphors at all. These things actually are happening. I don't know if the video's released. I don't write descriptions or put tags in my videos. Well, most of them, I don't. And I've never used a tag, so I don't know what video this was. But I talked about Calgary. And I talked about how it was gonna, be a primary target for nukes. I'm kind of going on a tangent here. But I'll get back to what I was talking about. But anyways, I don't know what video I said it on. But Calgary, I said it was the hailstone capital of Canada. I want to say 2 weeks ago. Well, when was it? It was like last week. Maybe a few days. It was like, Friday? I think it was Monday or Tuesday, where Trump said, he talked about this Golden Dome and you can Google it. So Trump offered Alberta to join the Golden Dome, to join the United States, to be part of the Golden Dome for free or pay a fee for it. And so people are voting to join the United States in Alberta. Well, guess what? The Golden Dome is an anti-nuke network. And it's kind of like the Iron Dome for Israel. I believe I already talked about the Iron Dome. I think I talked about the Iron Dome already on this channel. But anyways, the Golden Dome is an anti-nuke network that trying to see if I can say this. They say that the Golden Dome encapsulates the United States. I'm not going to say if that's true or not, but that's the premise. And Alberta is going to be in the Golden Dome. And guess what's in Alberta, guys? Calgary. And one day those hailstorms will not be ice. They will be nukes. How did I know that? Russia loves their symbolism. People, the American public, we have this problem with symbolism. We think we need everything logical, everything needs to be empirical, we need sources, we need all this. Guys, if you tell me with a straight face that our greatest weakness is not in our ability to track things, it's in our ability not understanding other cultures and other people. That is our weakness. That is our vulnerability. And we have gone down the tubes in trying to understand everybody. I don't... That was the thing that I made these videos, was to get people to see these patterns, to critically think, whether it's astrology, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's the connection between religion and Bible prophecies, whether it's between Israel and Ukraine, whether it's between whatever it is. I wanted to connect to a wide range of people where they could understand it from those perspectives that they understood. You know, like I said, whether it's how do you say that? Geopolitics, Bible prophecies, whatever it is, I wanted people to have something to connect to, so they could see what needs to be done in the future, so we're all on the same page in the end. And that's why I created these videos, because I knew that no one else would be doing these videos, and if I had all the information, well, I might as well do it. So what else was there? There was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, right. When I said early on, America and United States, totally different. This depends on how you interpret the Constitution. The United States Constitution doesn't actually define what a state is and what a state is not. All we know is that Washington, D.C. is not a state. It's a federal district, the capital of the United States. That's all we know that isn't a state. But it's not defined what a state is. So we assume that all these territories are representative of the United States. We don't know if that's true or not. That most likely will not be true. United States is an idea. The United States is a concept. It's built by the U.S. Constitution. America is the visual representation of that structure. So when you say America falls, America cannot fall unless the United States dissolves. Both of those things must be true. And things do have to happen before that happens. At the expense of 330 million people. Well, population-wise, yes. About 330 to 335 million people. That's the population of people living in America, the United States. Quote-unquote, the United States. So, what would happen would be, what was that? Okay, 330 million. Of those people who believe in democracy, that it works for them, would be around, maybe, I would estimate, maybe about 100, maybe 200 million people. I want to say it's the full 330 million people. So, at the expense, so it's kind of, democracy will not win for America in this one. I'll talk to something about that in a minute. So you have all these people in America who believe in the future of democracy and all this. But you can see how Make America Great Again, Trump is all about America. Go from America. About your join America. Canada merges with America. It's never about, well, let's be part of the United States. Because they use those apologize. It's never about, let's be part of the United States. But they use those interchangeably, but that's the vulnerability and weakness that we have, and it's exploitable. So when you say Make America Great Again, I would say Make America Great. We're making an isolation of the territories that can stand on their own without the United States. One way you could interpret that. Another interpretation is, well, if you don't have the power of the United States behind you, then what do you mean to the rest of the world? You have to be on your own. And in order to do that, you'd have to be part of Canada being with America. They gotta have the territories. If you don't do that, then people would actually literally starve to death. Because most of our imports, I know that China has some major imports of food that we consume. Not for everything. I couldn't really give you numbers on what food that is. I do know that potatoes is one of them. China is the #1 exporter of potatoes in the world. For America, I'm not sure what the numbers are. I'm not even sure if they're really documented or anything like that. America is always kind of like, well, we can do this here, we can do that here. I don't have the numbers, and I've never been able to really find that information. So, are we going to have to rely on MREs after the apocalypse happens? Maybe. It's not going to go good for America. I can tell you that right now. I already know what's going to happen, and it's not going to be good. You're going to want to leave. And you might be wondering, well, how does that happen if the United States cannot just dissolve one day. It can under one... Wait, let me think if I want to talk about this shot. Or if I want to wait later in the video. So yeah, like I was saying, Trump, what is he doing for America? Because I would believe that he's helping us become self-sustaining in the event where we're going to be kicked out of the world and we're isolating ourselves. So we're being kicked out of the world or we're isolating ourselves. I would say that both would be true. And that's definitely where things are heading towards. Which has never happened before in the history of America. The United States is more of a formalized concept. So who controls the formalization of the concept? I'm about to make a jump here that under what circumstances could the United States fall? Or dissolve, not fall, dissolve. America can fall, but the United States formalized can only dissolve. So what circumstance would that would happen in? Contrary to popular belief, the United States Constitution does not prohibit a king from controlling the United States or DC. It just says the United States itself cannot define what a king is. It cannot recognize the title of nobility that's let's go ahead and open Google for this. Open Safari. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I guess since we're going down that path, I might as well give you the deets on everything. I'm going to have to readdress this. Where is my... Set this to Safari. Let's see. That'll be Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. I have it memorized. But I'm not going to go into detail about what this says. Why is it not formatting right? For some reason. Oh, wait. We can move it up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Make sure it's not covering that. Alright, so I'm going to move my OBS. So here it says, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 of the U.S. Constitution, often referred to as the Foreign Emoluments Clause. I'm not going to show you my interpretation of this. I'm just going to show you that it doesn't necessarily say that you can't have a king in the United States. It says, prohibits individuals holding offices of profit or trust under the United States from accepting any gifts, emoluments, offices, or titles from foreign states without consent. That's not what it really says. I'm going to have to go to the... here it is. This is what it says. No title... This is what it really says. Section 9, powers denied Congress. This is basically saying that the powers are denied to Congress. For example, if you're from another... I'm gonna explain that after I read this. Clause 8, titles and nobility and foreign emoluments. Am I saying that right? Maybe. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. By the United States as formalization, the idea of the system that we live in. I'm looking at my OBS, not my camera. And no person holding office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. What this says is, it actually says, and people have interpreted this so many different ways. People say, I'll tell you a story about this actually, but people say this prevents any official getting any gifts or anything and being held to a higher standing compared to anyone else in government where they can't overrun everything. Not like be a king, for example. That's not what this says. That's interpretation, and that's a good interpretation. It's just not what it says. It says, power is denied by Congress. Congress denies that power, not the Constitution. No person holding any office of profit. Now this is also interesting. I'll tell you how I read when I was in college. I remember vaguely I read this, and I remember looking it over. And I was like, "What is that actually saying?" Because I don't understand it. Because here's what it says: no person holding any office or profit or trust under them shall, without consent of Congress. So Congress has to give the consent that you are a king. So, for example, you can't come from another foreign country and claim yourself to be king and have that recognition granted to you by the United States. Not by default. Congress would have to give you that right. People say, well, isn't that overreaching? Well, it makes sense that you're trying to formalize it within the country. If we're trying to keep up a framework here. And it says, powers denied Congress. It doesn't say that it doesn't say that a federal government or federal individual cannot be a king. It says that it would be denied by Congress unless they gave consent of you being one. So it doesn't say you can't be a king. It just says, well, Congress has to grant that right. But what defines that? This is nowhere mentioned anywhere else in the Constitution. This is the only place where it talks about a king, prince, foreign state, title, whatever, nobility in the Constitution. What I would call this, I call this, and I said I wasn't going to give my interpretation. Okay, I gave my interpretation. I call this the Supreme Being Clause. It says, and no person holding any office of profit. Now, it depends on how you read this. And no personal individual, that would be capital P, like capital I, an individual, no person holding any office of profit or trust under them. So what does that mean? Does that mean, and no person holding any office of profit in it there, and it says, or trust under them. So, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any trust under them. So this could be an individual in the United States holding a trust under them. We talked about in the Sovereign Citizen video how a trust could be an inheritance of another country. It says, shall without the consent of Congress. If Congress recognizes that this person, whether they're holding an office of profit, which would be in the federal government, or they hold a trust as an individual, now they could be both of one and the same. It doesn't say that it can't be both. But if they could have both of those things, or one or the other, then without the consent of Congress, you can't accept that, or the title of any kind whatsoever, and have it recognized by the United States from any king, prince, or foreign state. So if it came from another king or another prince or another country, you cannot be called, you cannot have that title of nobility and have it mean something unless you have the consent of Congress. That is what it's actually saying. That sounds weird, but I call it the Supreme Being Clause. And it goes into, it says this. So this is their interpretation. Doesn't have to mean this, but this is on the government website. It can mean this, but it doesn't have to mean this. It's ambiguous. The United States is revolutionary in its ambiguity. It's sacred in what it says and law of the land, but it's revolutionary in what it doesn't say. In the Republican calculated government is the Constitution. The Republican character of the government. The clause thus complements other constitutional provisions of the amendments. That wouldn't apply if we're talking about an inheritance. If we were talking about a thing where someone's overruling themselves as president, then you could bring in those amendments. But that's not what we're seeing here. If we're in vigorous government distinction between classes of American citizens, right, that's when you would use the amendments. But they wouldn't apply to what I'm talking about. So you can read this. I'm not going to go reading all this. It's a very broad, ambiguous clause. On a narrow reading, the clause merely prohibits a federal system of hereditary privilege along the lines of British aristocratic system. Right, that you can't be a king, you can't be King Charles or Prince William. It's not going to be Prince Harry, it's going to be Prince William who becomes king. They can't come to the United States and say, hey, I'm king. Right? That's what it says. British. Governmental grants of enduring favor or disfavor to particular classes based on birth or non-merit-based criteria. Right. More broadly understood, the clause could, that's what I'm saying. Consent of Congress would make that distinction. Not the courts, not the judicial system. Some commenters have suggested, for example, that the title of nobility clause might forbid admission purposes for legacy students at state universities or certain benefits that accompany receipt of the Medal of Honor. After the adoption of the 14th Amendment, challenges the government of favoritism based on class, race, or other basis have usually relied on the Equal Protection Clause. But if we're talking about a foreign state, that does not apply, as I've said. So that was my interpretation. And that's going to play a big key role in the future. And that's how you dissolve the United States, because you would not be a president, you would be a king that has that right. And you would be in charge of the DC. I know it looks like I'm reading over there. I'm not. It's on this side. I'll go ahead and the sides are swapped. I'm not looking over there. I'm just looking at my OBS, which right here is right underneath my camera. So, so if you have this king as presented by Congress, which makes you wonder, how does Congress actually operate? I'm not going to go into that, but if someone is able to get control of Washington, D.C. behind, with the president acting as a cover, quote unquote, then they could dissolve. The president under that authority could dissolve the United States. And say, well, the Constitution has been completed. And therefore, that is what would happen. And D.C. would become its own sovereign country at that point. And it would not represent the America. It would be like a flip. The president doesn't represent the United States. The federal government governs it. And D.C. has no representation beyond voting for a president, which doesn't even represent them. So it's like, why vote? Especially now with Trump, with all the federal stuff, and they're mostly based in D.C. You see how that can be a problem. So the roles get reversed, and when D.C. declares its sovereignty, America no longer has representation from D.C., and they're like, well, they're on their own. And that's why you need to make America, quote unquote, great. Sorry that I'm not saying right. My voice is not what it should be. So, make America great on its own merit, with Canada on its side. For those who didn't leave, you should have left. And if you don't have any representation of a constitution or DC, then you do not have a country, you do not have a way to leave, you do not have any airplanes, you do not have a military, you don't have any economy. You are essentially North Korea without a dictator, and you are on your own. Individualism at its finest. It seems as if the Constitution was always written like that. As we say, maybe, I mean, as far as we're aware, this is true. I'm highlighting over here. But as far as we can see, that the Constitution, when it says titles of nobility and foreign emoluments, that was part of the Constitution before anything changed. As far as we're aware. They could have added it later on, but I think that it probably stayed that way at the very beginning. No proof of that, but I would say probably, maybe. It's about perception, not about what's actually true, right? It's usually how justice goes in America. Well, that is how justice goes in America. It's about not facts. It's about, well, it's not about truth. It's about facts and perception. And if they can be, it's its own thing, you know. I'm not going to go into that. And it says without consent of Congress. It also implies that the judicial system, the Supreme Court, cannot overrule it, because Congress decides what it is. It's not up to the judges to say, well, who is king in this country? Now they might say, well, you can't have a king, but that's not what the Constitution says. So you wouldn't have any basis to go against that. So it's very, very ambiguous language. what else do I want to talk about? I think I've spoke about pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. That's why I made these videos. I wanted people to see all this and give them a chance and declare the American experiment as officially over, because if we keep going down this direction of pulling ourselves out of everything, now of course the world leaders would know this. They know how it goes. They see the symbolism. They see how things are turning. You know, they're not blinded by American politics or anything like this. But they know the direction we're going, and I don't know if they feel sorry for us, but they don't hate or dislike us. It's just how our system is. They knew the Constitution at the same time we do, guys. We all live in the same world, you know. It's not about hating. I mean, they might hate our politics or beliefs, but the Constitution is something you can respect. But by pulling out of everything and making ourselves irrelevant, and Chinese factories shutting down, and they're not fighting back, people say, well, that's the problem of the economy. Their economy is going to fall. No, it's showing that they're confirming our irrelevance, that we can't defend ourselves, you know, and we're pulling ourselves back, and they're not going to fight us coming back. They're not going to bring us back, so they're winning in that regard. They don't look at the measurements of military and economy like we have. China was in World War II. They only lasted about 2 weeks in World War II. They were defeated by Japan very early on. So their military was weak in World War II. Even though they were really big and huge and everything, they were weak. They saw the same war we saw. Right? And even then, no one wanted to take over China, even though they lost their military and everything. Of course, it did cause a rise in communism, but other than that, it didn't take them out. So we're pulling ourselves back. We're doing it to ourselves. We're pulling ourselves back. And it's like, well, if we keep going this direction, someone's going to get hurt. And we gotta end the experiment. That people are gonna realize that, and maybe these videos are not just to help people evacuate. It's probably also, I would say, to prevent people from doing a riot, saying that, well, America is going against us. It's the federal government that's going against us, and we gotta fight back for our country. But they have nothing to fight for, because even if they did fall and the United States is dissolved, they're still going to be on their own. So maybe it's to get people to realize that too. That, you know, someone had to be a voice between the noise. So I'll see you guys later. I hope that cleared up some information. And I guess I'll see the next one. The last video was scheduled for July 17th, I believe. Let me see. Like I said, I already have all my videos recorded. Gotta sign in. I'm going to my YouTube studio and looking at my dashboard here. I do see that someone unsubscribed. Yeah, my last video was on July 24th. July 17th video is astrology using tri-rail Trump, Ukraine, and United States. The last video is titled Israel. And that's on July 24th. So it's probably, I will not be making these videos after that video happens. I don't know. So I'll see you guys later. And I'll write about something. I might talk about Comic-Con in the next video or something, I don't know. So I'm just talking right now. So I'll see you guys in the next video. If there is a next video, there probably will be. But see you till then if that happens.